If I could invite everybody to please come on in and have a seat. Yeah, I do too. Okay. I just want to. Well, good morning and welcome to the Ohio Attorney General's Bureau of Criminal Investigation. I'm John Sprague. I'm actually the Director of Science and Research for the Attorney General's Office, and I also serve as the BCI Eminent Scholar here at BGSU. We gather here today to formally establish the Attorney General's Center for Justice Research. Following a competitive process statewide, BGSU was selected to lead this academic-focused endeavor. Although BGSU will oversee and manage the Center for Justice Research, researchers from across the state of Ohio will be invited to assist BGSU and the Center for Justice Research from the Attorney General's Office in conducting this research to help inform debate and policy decisions within the state of Ohio. So we're really glad that you're here today as we establish the Center for Justice Research. I'd now like to introduce President Rogers to actually make a few statements on behalf of the university. President Rogers.
Thank you, Dr. Sprague, and it is certainly a pleasure to be here today to announce this new partnership, this additional partnership with the Ohio Attorney General to establish the Center for Justice Research. Certainly want to thank General Yost for his leadership in establishing this center right here at Bowling Green State University. You know, we are currently standing here in the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation building here in Northwest Ohio, right here on the Bowling Green State University campus. And this building and that leadership of putting that the facility here really is the foundation that created our ability to start the Center for Advanced Forensic Science efforts here at Bowling Green back in March of 2012. Is that right, Dr. Sprague? Is when the initial discussion started. And so that partnership continues to bloom, and then today that successful partnership really has led to a great opportunity. And that great opportunity is to create and establish the Center for Justice Research. And it is a great example of the power of a public university and a public state agency coming together to serve Ohio. BGSU is certainly proud of Dr. John Bowman, Associate Professor and Quantitative Criminologist, who will lead this center, which is focused on exploring criminal justice here in the state. His academic leadership will inform policy and evidence-based practices and analysis. And this center will be absolutely a great learning experience for our students as well. You know, at Bowling Green State University, we talk about being a public university for the public good, and this center certainly helps to continue and accomplish that mission. It's research that demonstrates our relevance and the strength of our faculty and our graduate students and our undergrad students who will have a chance to be a part of this Center for Justice research. This is such a great example of the power of a public university coming together. So as we hold on 1 minute. So as we, and I get to introduce our Attorney General in just a few moments, but I want to make sure that, that I mention how important his commitment, his vision is that helped establish this center. General Yost and his team, certainly working together, I think has really positioned this center for great things in the future. And I am now very proud to introduce to you the 51st, so I'm like the 12th president, but he's the 50, it just shows that long history and tradition in Ohio, but the 51st Attorney General of the state of Ohio, who really is very instrumental in creating this center, and we are so looking forward to his work. General Yost, you've been on campus a few other times, and as you make your way up here, I'll tell a few more stories quickly, but General Yost has been on our campus multiple times, and what I've always appreciated is his interest in engaging in dialogue and debating ideas and thinking about the future of Ohio, certainly, but the importance of public service, the importance of ensuring the safety of our citizens. And General Yost, it's an honor to have you back on campus today. Thank you.
I am really pumped about this. So the Center for Justice Research actually comes from some discussions that we've had internally in the office and my experience. And before I talk about what we're going to do, I want to back up just a little bit and talk about the underlying issues. And particularly in this, nasty little period of history that we've had where we're all enjoying our masks and debates over separation, and it's funny to be people that had never ever even read an article in Scientific American or read Wirecutter or anything to do with science, suddenly we're really worried about how far can a viral load move between people in an indoor airspace. And that we had all these different researchers having opinions and measurements, and nobody was quite sure. Is 6 feet enough? Is it more than we need? Oh, it can go out to 28 feet. And I can't think of anything that really demonstrates how important it is for public policy makers to think and engage on science. But that leads me to an important distinction that I want to make that we're talking about over the last several years in conjunction with the number of policy debates about justice in Ohio. And that question is summed up in a phrase that I hear all the time in politics that doesn't mean what either side really offers it to say, which is trust the science. Science is not God. Science is not our spouse. It is not a matter of trust. Science is a way of describing the world around us. It's a way of describing what we can observe and measure and understand about the relationships between things and how they operate. Science is a continuing discovery. It is a journey. And we get better at it every year as we continue to explore and measure and test and understand. But science doesn't tell you anything about policy trade-offs. Policy requires evaluating many things about our society living together and how we're going to expend limited resources, how we're going to order our relationships between each other, our institutions, what the rules of the road are going to be. And science doesn't really drive those decisions, it informs them in the best of all possible situations. And we're trying to get closer to that best possibility with the Center for Justice Research. Now let's go one step further and think about this. Why don't we see more policy being made on science, on scientific findings, on those measurements and those understandings that we can replicable data that we can draw from the world around us? That's a complicated question, and like most things that we have to deal with in the public space, there's not a single causation that we can look at. But here's one. Let's think about how research happens. Generally, the government, most research is funded through the federal government. Some of it's funded by corporations, but in either case, the thing that tends to happen is there's an area of interest by the funder. There's a request for proposals, and then there's competitive process, and the funding happens, but that competitive process is driven by the researchers themselves. They talk about what they're interested in or how they think about a particular subject area. And sometimes, many times, that pure research isn't terribly valuable to the particular thorny question that has to be decided. So what this Ohio Attorney General's Center for Justice will do that's a little bit different than the rest of the research space is we're going to be asking very specific questions that we're looking for the answers to that involve public debate. And we'll still be relying on the researchers to propose methodologies and how to approach the thing, how to test it, how to control for variables, how to actually do the research. But it's going to be with a specific defined question in mind that we will be proposing from the Attorney General's office. And everybody around the state, we've got wonderful, wonderful universities, brilliant researchers, and we want to bring them into this area of informing public decisions. So let me give you an example. I've just talked in real general terms. Let me bring it all down to the real world, where one of the first projects I think we're going to work on. There's a great deal of discussion about bail reform. Now, as constitutional conservative, and somebody who spent most of my life in criminal justice, I fully support the presumption of innocence. Right? When you're accused of a crime, you're still innocent. Even after you're indicted and you're going to go to court, you stand in front of the jury as an innocent person. And the state, the government, has to prove, by proof beyond a reasonable doubt, that you are in fact guilty of that crime. So there are a lot of folks who are starting to argue about the question of bail. why are we holding particularly indigent people in custody for sometimes extended periods of time when they haven't been convicted of anything and are presumed at law innocent? Now, we also know from the research that a relatively small pool of people accounts for most of the violent crime in a community. So these two facts are somewhat in tension with each other. But there are discussions in the legislature right now about wanting to reform bail practices in Ohio. Now we come to the great opportunity to stop having opinions and actually get some research and find some answers, because we had a natural experiment is one that you don't set up the parameters. It occurs naturally in the world and gives you two populations or two environments that you can compare to each other to draw conclusions. We've got a great natural experiment that happened with the stinking COVID virus. Because of COVID, we had a limit to the number of people we could put in jail. And so particularly in our large urban counties, we had a situation where we in fact had a separate kind of set of considerations on who stays locked up in 2020. And we had in 2019 the status quo ante, two different sets of operating principles on bail, where in 2020, because of COVID, many people that would have been held on bond were released. Those are static populations. We know who those people are. We know we can find out what their history is. So things like what's their criminal history, what's their status on addiction disorder, what are their social history, what are their employment history. So a lot of the other things we can hold those, and we can isolate those variables and look at what the actual difference in the outcomes and recidivism is based on these two very different paradigms of pretrial detention. I'm excited about that. So we're going to put out an RFP and look for researchers that want to take a look at those data sets from 2019 and 2020 and help us determine which side is right. Is there an impact that we can look at? Or, as sometimes happens, is the data so noisy that there's not a right answer? And then, of course, we still have to make decisions about public policy. That's an example of what we're going to do. We will spend about $170,000 in the first year to fund some 2 or 3 research projects around the state. And hopefully, as time goes on, we will have a cadre of people that are interested in doing these projects. And most of all, it's going to help inform my office and hopefully the administration and the legislature as well in the decisions that they make. As far as I know, there's not another Attorney General office in the country that is doing this. And I'm really excited about the model that it may show for a partnership between the government and our fine research institutions to actually make smart policy. So with that, I would like to introduce to you Dr. John Bowman for briefer remarks than mine and introduce him to you. He will be spending about 40% of his time actually administering these grants and working with the researchers. He's got a distinguished background. I'm very excited to be working with him. And as we say in the Attorney General's office, let's do big good.
Good morning. I'd like to say thanks to President Rogers and to Attorney General Yost for their comments. My name is John Bowman. I'm an associate professor of sociology at Bowling Green State University. I am a criminologist, or a crime scientist by training. I am absolutely honored to have been selected as the first director of the Center for Justice Research through your office, Attorney General Yost. Thank you very much for this great opportunity. I'd like to say some quick thanks, and the list is too long to name everyone, but I would like to first and foremost thank Attorney General Dave Yost. I think it's pertinent to note here that this is Attorney General Yost's idea. This is his creation. And there are, to my knowledge, very few examples of research centers like this in the United States, nationally, at the national level and at the state level. So thank you for this great opportunity. Thank you to Carrie Bartunik as well, Brenda Reinhardt, Carol O'Brien, also in your office. Please express my gratitude. Thank you to Dr. John Sprague as well. Dr. Sprague, as he introduced, is the BCI Eminent Scholar, and he is has a partnership between the Attorney General, Bowling Green State. Here at Bowling Green, I'd like to say thanks to Mike Ogawa, particularly. Thank you for all your support, Mike. You've been very generous. Thank you. Ted Rippey, Dale Klopfer, Alicia Swanson, Tom Kornacki, and my department chair of sociology, Danielle Kuhl, and my colleagues that are in sociology. And obviously, President Rogers, thank you very much. Your generosity has been able to put this application forward to be competitive. Thank you for your support. Thank you to your cabinet and to the board of trustees as well. So you've heard a little bit about what the Center for Justice Research is from President Rogers and Attorney General Yost. I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on this, and I really want to just spell out the uniqueness of this situation. Operationally, what we're going to be doing is funding research, competitive research with other institutions, other universities, research institutions, colleges in the state of Ohio on issues that are going to be pertinent and relevant immediately to the state of Ohio. More importantly than that, this job, this responsibility that I'm going to oversee with the guidance of Attorney General Yost as well as Dr. Sprague, is that we're going to translate that policy. We're going to translate that research into something that is concretely meaningful to the people of the state of Ohio. And finally, we will develop policy and practice recommendations for Attorney General Yost's office to decide policy on. Working with the Attorney General, our goal is effectively to develop a backbone understanding of what evidence-based practice in the state of Ohio means for justice administration and justice policy. We want immediately effective policies to be put into place in the state of Ohio. When a policy is immediately effective, in other words, when it's put into place and it has its desired intent right out of the gate, it does three things. First off, it improves public safety. And this is not only true for the general public, but for law enforcement officers as well. Our law enforcement community can benefit from this as well. Secondly, because of the improvement of public safety, it decreases stress on a population. In other words, effective policies in the world of justice are a direct public health issue. And number three, effective policies are fiscally responsible policies. If you have a policy that does exactly what you want it to do right out of the gate, you don't have to take a step back and rethink things on the back end of it. It's doing what it's intended to do. Because of this saves money. So really, the Center for Justice Research isn't just a win-win scenario. It's really a win-win-win. There's three things here that we can be doing that will benefit the people of Ohio. And as the first director of the center and working with Attorney General Yost, it will be my ultimate goal to see those three things through. As a final thought, I would like to highlight that this is extraordinarily unique. That science and administration, high levels of administration of government, often do not work collaboratively well together. This is hopefully where that changes. The Attorney General has had a unique history in terms of thinking about science like a scientist. You heard what he had to say. At a public university, you're preaching to the choir. We're on board with this. The center is unique because it integrates science directly into the day-to-day operations of justice administration in the state of Ohio. There are only a handful of other centers, I reiterate, at the national level or the state level that I'm aware of that are similar to this one. And coincidentally, Attorney General Dave Yost supports one of those other centers. The Attorney General's Center for Justice Research is going to place science into the upper levels of administration in terms of the government administration of justice in the state of Ohio. I'm proud of that. And I'm honored to be the first director of this center. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. I appreciate this great opportunity for not only Bowling Green State, but for the public of the state of Ohio. Thank you, President Rogers. Let's do some public good. Thank you all. Appreciate it. And I'll turn it back over to Dr. Sprague.
Thank you, Dr. Bowman. I was going to invite the Attorney General and the President to please come forward and for the official signing of the agreement.
She best.
Trying to be cost efficient.
I appreciate that. We'll be happy to take any questions from the media. Although they're probably all afraid to keep talking if they ask questions.